This week, you and Alabama Senator Katie Britt introduced legislation that would protect in vitro fertilization nationwide. I'm curious what drew you to wanting to be a co-sponsor of this bill.
Well, because I think IVF is incredibly important technology. It enables parents and those who desperately want to be parents to have children, to have little boys, little girls that they can love, they can raise. It's really quite amazing nationally. 2% of all births in America come from IVF. There are over 8 million babies that have been born using IVF. And several months ago, when the Alabama Supreme Court issued its decision, there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of fear that IVF treatment was going to be in jeopardy. And that fear at times has been stoked by partisans who want to have people afraid. And so I approached Katie Britt, my colleague, and I said, look, let's draft legislation together that creates a clear federal right to IVF, makes it unequivocal that you are entitled to IVF, that no state can ban IVF, that no local government can ban IVF. And so that's the legislation we've drafted to protect that right for parents in Texas and all across the country.
I think one of those fears that also came after the Alabama Supreme Court ruling was questions about if an embryo will be considered a person with rights nationwide. We saw that it had a chilling effect on doctors who performed this procedure when there was the temporary shutdown of those clinics. Your bill doesn't seem to address that core question, and I'm curious why not.
Well, what the bill says is that no state can ban IVF, and that is a baseline rule for all 50 states. Individual states have debates over questions like personhood legislation. Several states have adopted that, states like Georgia, states like Alabama, states like Missouri, and IVF remains available in all three of those states. And so this bill was designed not to get into those questions which are contested. There are debates on those questions. It was designed to say, okay, what is a proposition that we should have complete agreement about? This bill was designed to be something that can be bipartisan. And as far as I know, all 100 senators support IVF treatment. And so we drafted this bill to be very simple and to put a clear and unequivocal federal right to IVF, that the states can't block it, because that was a proposition that I hoped and believed we could see Democrats and Republicans come together and agree upon.
Of course, you know, Senator Tammy Duckworth introduced a similar bill. I know you've expressed that you disagree with some of the broader provisions in the bill, but I'm curious if this is something that both Democrats and Republicans already agree on, at least at the core of protecting IVF nationwide. Why not band together and try and do this as a bipartisan package?
Well, look, I hope we will see Democrats come join us. The Duckworth bill is not a good bill because it's overbroad. It's designed to give the federal government power to get into questions of abortion, to strike down state laws concerning abortion. And I get that's a popular position if you're a liberal Democrat, but people across the country disagree on that question. And that's why the Supreme Court said questions of abortions will be decided at the state level, and different states will adopt different standards, and it's going to reflect the democratic process. Listen, abortion is an issue that people of good faith have strong and passionate disagreements on. And under our Constitution, the way we resolve questions like that is through the democratic process. And the Duckworth bill is really trying to do a lot more than IVF, which is why it's not going to pass into law. We deliberately made this bill narrow and focused just on IVF. And if the decision is based on the merits, this bill that Katie Britt and I have introduced should pass 100-0. It is entirely possible that Democrats will block this bill. But if they block this bill, it will be because they make the cynical decision that they'd rather have the issue to campaign on in November than actually pass ironclad legislation and federal law protecting IVF in all 50 states.
Given the realistic hurdles that you acknowledged, especially being in an election year when there's, political realities for both parties when it comes to passing legislation, Democrats and Republicans agree on this at the core. How do you overcome those obstacles and get just the bare-boned protections for IVF passed on a federal level?
Yeah, look, that's what we've tried to do with this bill text is find language that everyone should agree with on the merits. I can't control if Democrats decide they want to play politics with something. I think that it's unfortunate. I don't want them to do that. I hope they don't. And listen, I'll say part of the reason why you see Democrats trying to sow confusion and spread misunderstanding about IVF is the position of elected Democrats in the Senate on abortion is really quite extreme. It is outside the mainstream. The position of every single Democrat in the Senate is they support unlimited abortion on demand, literally up until the moment of birth. Late-term partial birth abortion, 39 weeks, 40 weeks in. That is a really extreme position. Nationally, about 9% of Americans agree with that position. 91% of Americans say that's going too far. And so what happens is when Democrats are running for office, they don't want to defend that extreme position. So instead, what they want to do is suggest, well, mean Republicans want to take away IVF. Now, that's not true. As I said, every single senator supports IVF, but this legislation makes clear that it's not true. And I'm inviting the Democrats, come join me. Let's put ironclad protection for IVF in federal law so that it's protected in every state in the country.
Of course, you acknowledged again the challenges of this. Democrats are going to want to pass their bill. Republicans are going to want to pass their bill as well. But voters do have that appetite for someone who can work across the aisle and get things done. You just had a win on that with the FAA bill. Are you going to be that broker? Are you going to be that person on this IVF issue?
Look, I certainly hope so. And I've spoken with a number of Democrats already about it. In the last 2 weeks, I've had two major bipartisan victories in the Senate in 2 weeks. You mentioned the FAA bill that passed a week ago. That is major legislation passed and signed into law. It ended up investing $100 billion into aviation, improving safety for the traveling public, directing the FAA to hire more air traffic controllers to enhance safety and also to reduce delays. It also invests in technology on runways and air traffic control rooms to reduce the risks of accidents. And it increases competition to lower prices. And it ended up being an overwhelmingly bipartisan bill. The bill I authored passed the Senate 88-4. And so we united Republicans and Democrats, and President Biden signed it into law. And actually, just yesterday, I had another bill pass on the floor of the Senate. It was a Congressional Review Act bill that was overturning a rule that came from the Biden Department of Energy. And it's a rule that would effectively ban gas furnaces in your home, the most affordable gas furnaces. And it is driven really by the environmental extreme, but the effect, it would affect 60% of American households and drive up cost, force homeowners to pay thousands of dollars to retrofit to get new furnaces that are more expensive. I introduced the Congressional Review Act resolution on the floor to overturn that. And it ended up yesterday passing by a vote of 50-45. 4 Democrats joined us. And so now that's going over to the House of Representatives, where I expect it will pass there as well.
So can we expect to see that same type of work on your end when it comes to this IVF legislation with getting Democrats to pass something that the majority of Americans want to see protected?
Look, I certainly hope so. I am trying. I am making the case. On the face of it, this is legislation that every Democrat should support. If they choose not to, it will be because they made a political decision that it's more advantageous to be able to run a bunch of TV attack ads on it than to actually roll up your sleeves and do something to protect the right to IVF. I hope Democrats don't go down the political route, but at the end of the day, they're going to have to make that choice.
All right, Senator Cruz, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate it.